Good morning, Jason.
Good evening.
It's good evening. Of course, you're joining us from Canada.
Correct.
And we are in Dubai and back with you today. It's great to see you again.
Likewise, Habib.
And I believe that for the audience watching us now and also for all our participants at DGC Live, Jason is a veteran of the gaming industry, though he looks still very young and pretty much in shape. But that's what the gaming industry does to you. It keeps you young. So Jason has had 30 years of experience in the gaming industry. He has followed governments, studios, young entrepreneurs, and through execution labs also now recently that he founded. He has followed them from stages of maybe idea or a couple of people that are just really enthusiastic to a successful studio. He has helped government build ecosystems for the gaming industry and created really the right environment for entrepreneurs in the gaming industry to thrive. And today, Jason, we will focus our conversation on entrepreneurship and investors' education for the gaming industry. And
Awesome.
we do know that there is always this question, do we invest in the gaming industry or not? And I believe it's a question that is answered really differently in each part of the world. And you have traveled the world over the years, you have worked with studios all over the globe, and it's an important question for our ecosystem here in the MENA region as well. As you know, we are an emerging market. So I'll start with my first question for you, which is what is really from your experience and your knowledge, how can we really become an entrepreneur in the gaming industry?
How do you become an entrepreneur in the game industry? I mean, it's going to sound silly, but you be an entrepreneur in the game industry. Right? The best way to learn how to be an entrepreneur is to be an entrepreneur. And in many ways, it's more of a mindset. It's more of an attitude to jump in, take the risk, and go for your dreams and put a team together to conquer the world. And sure, there's certain skills in terms of business, pitching, marketing, product development, all of these kinds of things, which increase your chances of succeeding as an entrepreneur. But a lot of it is sort of the mind, it's the heart, it's having the right attitude and mindset. And some of that's cultural, right? Some of that is sort of built into the culture. To what extent we support or don't support entrepreneurs? To what extent do we support or not support risk taking? To what extent do we support or not support failure? Right? Do you support failure so you can learn and build on failure, or is failure really frowned upon, which then kind of limits the ability to be an entrepreneur and really go after big success? So there's all kinds of things around sort of the mindset, the psychology of entrepreneurship that is critical.
Is there something specific to the games industry? Is the risk higher? Is it only a matter of culture? Do we need more skills? Do we need more confidence? Do we need people like Jason to be there and help us in knowing what we need to, because let's say that the gaming industry is 10 years in our region, it's been there, people are starting to get the feel of it, the importance of it. I can relate. I know when we started DGC, how was it perceived, and today it has changed. It's becoming much better. But still, I mean, is there something specific in terms of the risk when you are entering as a studio, and also if we can then talk about if we are an investor, how do we actually perceive this risk?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things there to discuss, Habib. I mean, the first one in the game industry, it's sort of embracing the entrepreneurial identity. And one of the challenges in the game industry is many of the people working in the industry come from a creative background, right? They're artists, they're designers, they're programmers, they're musicians. And so they're coming at games more from an artistic perspective, more from I have something to build, to craft, and they do whatever they can to get that out into the world. So it's really a creator's mindset as opposed to a business mindset. So once you embrace the entrepreneurial mindset, the challenges are quite similar at an abstract level with whatever business or sector or market you're in. It's the usual challenges of finding funding and chasing customers and doing the good marketing and some luck and all that kind of stuff. But the unique challenge to the game industry really is this sort of many developers or creators not yet accepting the identity or embracing the identity of entrepreneurship. And so you still, even as I travel the world, you run into developers who you think would be considered entrepreneurs, but really are just sort of hackers, programmers, artists, designers, and haven't sort of embraced that identity of being a call it a entrepreneur / creator, not just a creator. So I think that's one of the unique things you see that's quite specific to the game industry.
I do agree with you, and it's something that we always also see here in our region. We see that every time we discover that developers that are doing great things, but they're not able to take it to the next level. So let's say, so what do we need then in order to help these developers that don't have this entrepreneurship, and that didn't embrace yet this entrepreneurship spirit to take it to the next level?
I mean, it's all kind of linked. To be an entrepreneur, you do have to have some sense that there are resources and tools and support for what you want to achieve, whether that's through investors, whether that's through education, whether that's through government initiatives. That certainly eases the journey or increases your chances of success when, as we know, the most likely outcome for a startup is failure. So there's a lot of hurdles. So if you want to embark on that journey, you want to be able to look, whether it's, in your city or in your country, you want to see that there's opportunities and there are resources to support that journey. Some countries, some cities, some regions have much more of that support in place, and some regions or countries have nothing in place, and you're really kind of, in the desert on your own against all odds. And so that's part of what we're seeing around the world is there are countries or governments that see the potential in games. They see the business value, the economic value. They see the impact for job creation and youth engagement, all of these kinds of beneficial things, and they're getting behind the game industry and want to see more of it in their region. So there's definitely a role for government to play. There's also a role for investors to play. Starting a new company, starting a new endeavor takes resources, it takes funding. I have to hire programmers and artists to create the game, et cetera, to export to global markets. And if there are not investors that are willing to back game entrepreneurs, then that's a hard sort of hurdle to get over. And so part of it does take educating the investment community and helping them understand what opportunities exist in the game space.
So how then can we, for example, educate the investors as well? So now we find ourselves with, and I'm going to relate again things, and maybe you can give us some examples from other parts of the world, how they started and where they are today. Our region today has a lot of talents. Gaming is on top of the revenues globally with the highest growth rate. So the market opportunity is there. And we've been seeing a lot also of companies that are not related to games to start into games. Most of them think that they start with esports because esports is such and I'm sure you have something to say about this. So how do we actually start when we want to become an investor in the gaming industry? What should we look at? What should we consider? And as you said, should we wait for a return on investment like if it was real estate, or should we think differently?
Yeah, well, Habib, I mean, these are great questions. Part of it is it depends on who the investor is. Depending on who the investor is, they will view the returns differently. So if the investor is your uncle, well, maybe your uncle is happy that he gets his money back in a year and you didn't sort of burn his loan. If the investor is the local government, perhaps the return they're looking for is job creation and hiring youth engineers and artists so they don't leave the country. So they may be looking at sort of a more macro level of return. Whereas if I'm a venture capitalist, well, I want your game studio to become the next Supercell and sell for $10 billion, and I collect a very handsome financial return. So there are different definitions of success depending on who the investor is or what the investor is and what their own objectives are. And often these are not incompatible, and all of those investors can be investing at the same time, right? So you might get a loan from your uncle to get started because he's the only one that loves you enough to give you some seed money. That gets you started, and then you have a prototype or something a little more advanced, and then you can go see some angel investors or venture capitalists, and then the government sees what you're doing is building economic impact. So maybe they have other programs and resources to enable you to increase your headcount or explore global markets, and so all of them are investing you. They're investing in you for different reasons. They're investing in you in different ways or at different times to enable different kinds of outcomes. So before we can really dig into how to invest, you do have to ask who's the one investing, and so my answers would be slightly different if it's the government versus your uncle versus an angel versus a professional venture capitalist. So I mean, I don't want to evade your question, but I'm kind of adding an extra layer of granularity to the question.
It's true that, as you said, all of these levels somehow have to exist in order for someone to start, whether you start directly with the venture capitalist or from the government, or you start with your uncle. But if these options are available, it will definitely help the journey. I believe you told me one time a story about, I think, the Blizzard first investment. This is interesting also for example, for the audience to know, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, games are booming, and as you said, it's billions and billions of dollars. So there are big rewards to be had, but it's very risky. It's hit driven. For every winner, there's 100 losers. Much like other entertainment type sectors or hit driven sectors. So big rewards, but also big risks. The example of Blizzard, as many people know, Blizzard, one of the most famous, most successful game companies in the world, with World of Warcraft and Overwatch and other great games. That company was started, I believe, was the early '90s, and the two co-founders, they put $10,000, together to found the company. And one of them, I believe, was Mike Morhaime. His $10,000 was a loan from his grandmother. So when we make jokes about, hey, get some money from your uncle, or what, it's real. It happens, right? So Blizzard was partially founded based on a $10,000 loan from Mike Morhaime's grandmother, and now that company I mean, it's morphed, it's evolved, it's been bought and sold. Now it's part of the Activision family. Activision Blizzard combined is worth over $50 billion today. So I don't know what the deal terms with the grandmother, but I assume she at least got her money back. So
Yes, of course.
no awkward family dinners.
So we know today that the gaming industry is leading in terms of revenues in the entertainment business. With over $140 billion, it makes 3 times what Hollywood makes or what the music industry does. But still, we see, as you mentioned, some reluctance or barriers for investors to go into it. It's proven that it's making money, and also we've seen that during this situation of the COVID-19, the gaming industry actually continued normally, and even in some aspects did even better. So, is it still a risk of 10 to 100, or is this risk? And also, does money buy actually success in this industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, success is a combination of talent and money and luck and timing. It's all of these things, but funds or funding is definitely one ingredient that enables success, or at least increases the chances of success. The issue that you're sort of scratching at is that traditionally investors like to invest in the sectors that they understand, that they can look at a business plan, they can look at a financial statements, they can talk to a founding team, discuss their business, what their roadmap is, et cetera, and have some ability to determine, is this a good business? Is there a good chance of success here? If yes, I invest. If no, I don't invest. And the reality is that very few investors know or understand the underlying economics of the game industry, nor do they understand how games are built, the technologies and design elements, nor do they understand how games are marketed, or how all the global discoverability and stuff around games work. So some investors do. There are certainly some investors that are specialized in games, and so they're able to cut through and they can really identify things. But the vast majority of investors, they're bankers, or they're coming from other sectors, or they're real estate people that they know a good real estate investment, but ask them to invest in the game, they have no idea how to sort of decipher or to parse risk, success, market, all this kind of stuff. And so you show them your game with dragons and robots, and they look at it, and it's like, oh, well, you have nice dragons, but I don't know. I just don't know whether those dragons are going to succeed and are worth my funding or investment or not. So a big part of it is investor education. A big part of it is that slowly over time, more game savvy investors are entering into positions of power as fund managers, as general partners, because they grew up playing games, or maybe they worked at some of the bigger game companies and now have moved into the investment side, and so they have comfort and understanding. So that's a big part of it, and that's not only true of, call it, professional investors, but it's also true of governments or other agencies that are looking at supporting economic activities, but again don't understand how the game industry works or what the underlying economics are. And so you ask a government, hey, support this sector, and you have government officials that really don't understand how the market works and don't know what to do. So a lot of it really is this kind of, as kind of simple as it sounds, it's really about understanding the underlying economics and structures of the game industry.
If we were to briefly just summarize these underlying elements economic elements of the gaming industry. From your experience, like top of the line, what are we talking about?
Yeah. I mean, well, now it's like, this massive sort of mental model of what has a chance versus what doesn't have a chance. I mean, part of it is splitting between two different fundamental business frameworks. One framework is the game as a service or GaaS framework, and the other framework is the game as a product or a GAP, for lack of a better term, framework. And game as a service looks a bit like SaaS, right? It's software as a service. It's online. It's in the cloud. You're attracting users. They're coming in. You're treating them sort of like a user funnel, attracting engagement, conversion, retention. All these kind of SaaS style models apply. And usually, if done well, there is a high level of scalability, and a lot of the big multi-billion-dollar successes exhibit that framework. They're built as a GaaS or a SaaS. And that tends to be where VCs and the professional investors invest in. It tends to be investments in the companies, much like you would see in the traditional sort of Silicon Valley style of investing in startups. The other side is the GAP side, or game as a product. That tends to look a lot more like Hollywood, like movie production, right? The games tend to be a premium price point. So you go to you go to Steam or Xbox and you pay $15 and buy the game. You play it, you fight the dragons and robots, and you save the world, and the game is finished. So it's not this ongoing service that's in the cloud. It's kind of a consumable product, much like a movie is a consumable product. And that tends to exhibit a much more linear type of success as opposed to SaaS, which is more exponential, more scalable. And that is better suited for project financing, much like you would see in Hollywood. And you would do more revenue share type models. And so one of the kind of core mismatches is you have many younger developers that are primarily pursuing games as products. One, because they don't have the experience to do the SaaS model, they don't have the resources and the knowledge, so they're just making a game as a product. And they take that game as a product and they go see VCs. And VCs say, "Oh, that looks like a movie. That looks like Hollywood. I don't invest in content. I want to see a SaaS model." So there's sort of a fundamental kind of crisscrossing that happens, and the developer doesn't realize that he's going to the wrong kind of investor, and the investor doesn't even know how to evaluate. They just look at it and say, "Oh, that kind of looks like movies, and I don't do movies. I want to see more like software as a service. So that's not for me." And neither of them kind of know how to sort of fix the problem. So I mean, the first piece of answering that question is understanding which track you're on. And if you're an investor that's accustomed to more the Silicon Valley kind of company equity investing, then you need to only look at games as a service and those kinds of opportunities. And then if you're more of a, your uncle giving you a loan, maybe taking a little rev share, or a government program that's investing based on a recoup or something like this, well, then you want to look at the game as a product type opportunities. And similarly, if you're a developer making a game as a product, then don't waste your time chasing the angels in Silicon Valley investors, because they're not going to understand how to evaluate. They're just going to say, it looks like a movie. I don't do content. So that's kind of step number one of kind of clearing up the paths to investment. And that step alone, things start to become more clear and more efficient. So that's sort of step one in the mental model. And then after that, you're looking at sort of more like current market trends, what things are finding an audience. How do you find that audience for yourself? Does your game exhibit the kinds of features and mechanisms that allow you to capture that audience? And then you're sort of getting much more granular into, the product design, community development and audience development thinking, And those are the kinds of things you want to see coming from the game studio, as opposed to historically, it's developers tend to be very inward focused, right? It's, I have an idea, I want to make dragons and robots, I'm gonna make dragons and robots. I need some money. Can't someone just give me some money so I can make my dragons and robots? And they're sort of very inward focused, as opposed to looking at the market and understanding those different models and stuff. So, and like 100 more things, but at least those elements start to kind of unpack and provide some degree of clarity.
Jason, what about when big publishers today are investing in other studios? Because this is also one trend that has been happening for a long time. So it's not an investor that is outside of the gaming industry. It's not your angel investor. It's not your government. It's actually a AAA studio that is just, buying other companies, and when they see that this studio is going to work with them well, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so this is sort of traditional or typical M&A or corporate development type investment. Many of the big studios around the world do that. You see kind of two main scenarios. One is the bigger company, the bigger studio, buying a successful developer, right? A developer that has been around a while, has had a hit or two. They own that intellectual property. So it's not just programmers or artists in the company. It's they actually own valuable franchises and games and brands. And so that and also revenue, like profits. And so that bigger company is absorbing those brains, that IP, that revenue into the mothership or the parent company. That's a very typical kind of M&A type strategy. The other one, which we see less of, is more what you would call the acqui-hire, which is I'm acquiring you really just to hire the team. Right, you've got a team of 10 smart programmers and artists. You haven't really built up, so much value or brands or past game successes, but you're a talented group of designers and programmers and artists. So I'm just gonna buy you so I can acquire the headcount because I need it to work on my other games and so on. Normally, the value of that acquisition is relatively low. I mean, maybe you can go buy a nice sports car, but it's not, putting tens of millions of dollars in your pocket and really creating real wealth. Those are the two typical ones. It's kind of like M&A capturing something that's hugely successful and generally paying a premium, big acquisition, or this kind of acqui-hire, just grabbing your brains because I need more brains in the mothership. And there is a third option, which we see much less of, is minority investing or venture investing at the corporate level. So a big entity identifying startups or younger companies and making a minority investment, a non-controlling investment in those startups. And I call that sort of the insurance policy investment. Right. So if I think, there's 10, I see 10 different studios and they're all doing wild, innovative stuff. It's a bit too early to tell whether or not any of them are going to succeed. So I buy an insurance policy. So I place a minority investment that at least gets me in the door. So Habib, if you make the next, fortnight, well, I was in there at the beginning and I paid very little to have a seat at the table. And then if my other 9 things all failed, well, it's no big deal because I backed you and you're making the next big thing. But that style of corporate venture investing, it's happening. Tencent does it quite a bit. But we see that far less than someone just grabbing you because you already are big and successful, and they just want to absorb all of your brand value and IP value and your brains.
So, Jason, we still have a few minutes just to summarize a little bit. So, the gaming industry has definitely proven that it's a successful business. It's a creative business. It has also evolved more than any other entertainment business, even in terms of what it's delivering to the gamers, to the users, and it has also evolved in different types of ways of playing games, from mobile to esport to PC to console to so many. So again, let's go back to our region here, and from your experience and to the subject of this session, if you were to give to young startup owners in the region and investors in the region, each one, like 3 or 4 tips, like if you are an investor, if you're an entrepreneur, what should you look at, and should you believe in this industry and start really putting your efforts together?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and there's a lot of different ways to sort of slice and dice that. I mean, on the one hand, you need the raw talent, right? Games are not made by robots. They're made by talented men and women that have legitimate skills in art, design, programming, etc. And so there is an investment that needs to be made on the education side. And within that, I would include business education, such that as a region, we have a stream of artists, designers, programmers, entrepreneurs, right? Business savvy, marketing savvy people coming out of the schools, and they've been given very specialized education and knowledge about game industry and the potential for games. So that's kind of one piece of investment or change that needs to happen. The other is support for creating new startups. So if you have all this talent coming out and they say, well, we're ready to conquer the world, well, they're going to need both funding, right? So some seed level, entry level funding to get them started. And then the mechanism support structures to coach them and provide the mentorship and give them the room they need to grow and learn, to create games and create products and to try to conquer the world. Now, in how you design that, this is sometimes the tricky part, particularly when you're talking with government, is you have to build those systems in a way that enable failure, that embrace failure. Because if we have a bunch of kids coming out of school and we have funding and resources and a program to support 100 new startups, that's wonderful. But if we're lucky, 10 of those will succeed or have any level of success, and the other 90 will crash and burn. And we know that going in. And often, and I've seen this when I've advised governments in the past, is the government says, okay, well, just tell me the 10 that will succeed and I'll only invest in those. And I said, well, no, if we only invest in 10, you'll get 2 that succeed. And they're like, okay, great, job is done. Tell me the 2 and we're done, we're good. So no, you have to invest in all 100. And the 90 failures are the byproduct of discovering the 10 that will succeed. And so you have to build these sort of systems and also not, kill the talent that failed. They have to be kind of repurposed and go to the teams that are scaling up or given new opportunities to start something new based on what they learned from their failures. So there's a whole sort of structure to put into place to enable the startups to prosper and to have the support to go out in the world and have success, and then bring in the investors and find the right global partners and connect all those dots. But my guess is at the base level is the flow of talent, and then the initial funding and support structures to enable that talent to take a shot at starting something and building something.
Thank you, Jason. amazing speaking to you, and I'm sure that your meeting platform mailbox will be receiving a lot of requests because this year we actually give access to developers for attending the conference for free. So I'm sure a lot of them will try to to send you some requests and try to get more of your advice and experience through the meeting platform. We're catching you a bit later for another session on ecosystems. So it will be also very valuable for the audience and the participants to listen to the other part, I believe, which is the larger scope of the whole thing, which is the ecosystem itself, that complements what we just said now about entrepreneurship and investor education. So you won't be getting much sleep today because I guess we're keeping you up. But thank you for your time.
Wonderful.
And we'll catch you a bit later then.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Habib. My pleasure.
You're welcome, Jason. Thank you.